guys, I'm Gabby. I'm a wet and wet oil painter, and this is part 2 of barns. So I'm going to bring you closer to the drawings that we did of our barns, and then I'm going to go through painting these. So let's get started. All right, so there's our 2 barns, and we're going to go through the process of painting them. If you guys have taken the time to watch my other video that I've done, or my other few videos that I've done about painting canvas tents, that is great. That will help you. If you have not, that's okay. We're going to sort of play on that idea in this video as well. Only it's going to be less difficult because painting barns is easier than painting canvas tents. It just is, because the coloring is easier to do. So this is completely dry canvas. You can do this if you leave the area completely dry, or you can take a paper towel and you can kind of first scrape off with your knife and then dry off with a paper towel the area that you're going to be painting into. So I'm going to take a nice flat brush. Flat brushes are going to be our best friends to do this. So like this, very nice flat brush. And this one's basically brand new, so it's super flat and quite cooperative. And the colors that I'm using, if I can stop sticking my fingers in them, are these. So this is like a lighter scarlet, this is a darker, this is a cad red, and then I have orange and I have some white. And we might need to add to this as we go, but we'll see. So this is super thin down, and this is my darker red, and so I'm going to hit this side. One thing that you have to decide right away going into this is where your light's coming from. I'm going to have our light coming from this direction on this barn. And we'll just come in and fill this in. If you're doing barns that are a little bit closer up and you're doing more detail on them, then doing it with a brush I think is a lot easier to do. It's a lot easier to control. All right, so I'm going to take my paper towel that I have here. Now that I put that sort of wash on, the undercoloring, if you will, and I'm going to wipe off the excess stuff. This makes it easier for us to sort of work with the color, and it gives us the ability to sort of layer over it right away. I'm going to gently wipe my brush off. I need a little bit of paint thinner just to sort of get that darker stuff off. And then I'm going to actually take, I think, my cad red, because I want to definitely see a difference with a lot of paint thinner again. And you could do an undercoloring too with like a ultramarine blue over here, depending on how dark and shadowy you want it to look. One thing I have talked about too when it comes to painting any sort of building is start smaller than you plan on actually having it, because these things do tend to grow, especially if you do this without drawing out the lines. And even if you do, you'll end up sort of getting a little bit bigger, but you can do this without drawing out lines. You can do it with your paint. And that's what I actually do a lot of times, because I don't like having to fight with pencil lines. Not that it's the end of the world. Now this red that we used before is a little bit cooler of a red, which is good because we want to have sort of a cool side and a warm side. Then we'll take this off. And then the stuff around the outside, it is best to do your painting of the back area first. Do your background first, knowing that you're going to have to fix it at the end, because you're going to end up outside of the lines a little bit. Okay, so now we have those colors on there, and we can take brushes, we could take a knife, so I'm going to do a little bit of both and just play around with this. I think I'll take a little bit of blue, and the blue that I have right at my fingertips here is some phthalo blue. So ultramarine blue is a better blue to use because it is more of a cooler, sort of docile type of blue. But I'm going to take a little bit of that blue, get it on my nice flat brush here. And then just to sort of create this rustic look, I'm just making these lines, but I'm not filling this in completely. And just to clarify, I'm making lines like this, keeping my brush really nice and horizontal, and just making sure that that edge is staying sort of crisp as I'm doing that, so that I have nice thin lines over here. And then I think underneath here, so that I have an obvious shadow from the roof, I will fill in that bit a little bit more. And then I think along that edge I'll do a little bit more dark. Now you really have the option of sort of leaving that blue or wiping it off. It was really thin to begin with, but not quite as thin as the red was, so it's gonna stick around a little bit more regardless. But I just worked it in a little bit. And then I'm gonna clean my brush again. And then I'm gonna grab some of that red that I began with. And now it's not quite as thin as it was the first time. And I'm gonna come back in and sweep over it. Not trying to fill in every little bit of it. Okay, because perfect is not what we're going for. Most barns do not look nice and perfect. They do when they're first painted, but that doesn't last too long, especially if it's not maintained. And at least where I'm from, a lot of the barns are not maintained, so they do look a little bit rough. Okay, so there we have that piece filled in. We're going to leave it like that. We can take a little bit of a warmer color and bring it over. I'm going to grab a little bit of that orange. And you could even do this with, like, say, a little bit of Indian yellow. Okay, and just sort of warm it up a little bit. We'll grab some more of that cad red that we were using to begin with. And we'll put some lines in there too. Now when I went over the sort of door area, and up here I should have done this a little bit too, I don't want to make it look like those lines carry over, because obviously the doors are separate panels of wood. Okay. I do apologize, by the way, my dog likes to snore like a chainsaw, so you're probably going to hear him because he is currently sawing logs on his little chair. Okay, so we have that done. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give some lines to the doors. I'm going to actually use a different brush because the brush that I'm using now is thoroughly reddened. So I'm just going to grab a different flat brush. And actually this one is an angle brush, but flat angle, whatever. I'm going to grab some white. I'm not grabbing paint thinner. And I sort of have it a certain amount of thick. And I'm not going to slide my paintbrush to do this. Now, depending on how detailed you want to make this, you could easily do, some grays for shadowing in the white area. You could do some more shadowing in the doors. I'm making these barns fairly big, but I'm sort of painting them the way that I would if they were a little bit more distant. And that divide stays there, so we'll put that in a little bit deeper. Okay, so that's that. And then if you do a top area, come back and do the same thing. And I'm just kind of plopping the paint on. And then you can sort of straighten it out. This looks a little bit wonky, like I said in the first installment. If you didn't watch the first part of this, by the way, go back and watch the first part. If it doesn't look right, it's because it isn't right. You can come back with that red brush and sort of fix what you need to fix. Oh. I wiped my brush off and it went straight into a pile of white paint, which is not what I wanted. Okay. I did a huge cross-cut two-man saw for some people, and I did it of their farm with all their different farm buildings, and I sort of had to get creative with how I did it because the farm isn't in a big line, but the saw blade is. And what I ended up doing is I ended up painting the buildings, and I ended up painting over them like 4 times repainting the white, repainting the red, doing a little bit of different colors each time. And it really made it look pretty cool. Now the roofs of these majestic old buildings really tend to vary. Sometimes they're grayish, sometimes they're darker, sometimes they're lighter. I'm going to take a little bit of the orange, a little bit of the phthalo blue, and I'm doing it on my white brush, so it's kind of this grayish color. And we'll plop down the paint. Again, the amount of detail that you put into this stuff depends on how close it is and how much time you want to spend doing it. The last video that we're going to do is going to be painting these with a knife, which will be a much faster process, but also a lot less detailed. All right. Now this next part that I'm going to do, I'm taking the blue and the orange, but I added a little bit of that really deep red to it. Because this is angling down more, it's going to be shadowed more. Now if the light were coming from this direction, then this part up here would actually look darker. And not going for perfection here, so it doesn't have to be too perfect. I'm going to grab some of that orange again, and maybe just a tiny bit of white. And this piece is sort of angling the same direction the original part of the roof was. So I just came back in and lightened it up. I can take some white and go basically right along where they meet, and just pull it down ever so gently. And there we go. And you can take that too. You could take like a little bit of white and come along where these two meet, and then pull it back up into the roof. Creates a pretty cool effect right away. Now we can't forget about the other side. Now some of these roofs hang over more than others. Just something to sort of keep in mind. And then I think now that I've done sort of that front edge, I'm going to come back with my brush and just put in that front edge. And that's how we paint our red barn. Now our brown barn, we're going to paint, but I'm going to paint that with a palette knife. So I'm going to do that one in the third video, and then we'll go from there. So that's it, guys. That's part 2 of painting barns. Any questions, comments, concerns, if you want to put them in the comment section of the video, I will happily address them. I'm Gabby. Thank you very much for watching. If you guys could like, share, subscribe, that would be helpful. Until next time, I really do hope that you fall in love with oil painting just as much as I have. Bye, guys.